Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel.
Boom! What's up, everybody? Teen sensation Billy Tucci here, and we've got a great show for you tonight on the Brofessionals, which is our weekly cast with myself and 5 other fantastic bros, all comic book professionals, and we discuss topics of the week, or just topics in general that are relevant to the comics industry. And today's topic is going to be inkers. Are they extinct? Comic book inkers, for that matter. And not inking in general, not inking as a craft, but those who are dedicated comic book inkers, especially with the advent of digital inking, digital colors. Is there really room for someone? Can someone make a living someone who wants to break in and just be a dedicated traditional inker? We're going to find out. And we're going to find out on the Brofessionals. So let's bring in our first guest. I think we should go with, probably the best known inker of us all, the man who survived the California killer, highway killer as a young boy, and got his senses gained his wits about him and left the left coast for the sunny skies and good old roughneck world of Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Art Thibert.
Freedom to freedom.
To freedom land, to freedom indeed. Next we can go to probably the tallest, most handsome man in comics today. One of them, if not, an incredibly talented man, long-time fan, incredible career, a great all-around artist, including inker, as you are. But without further ado, why not we introduce, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Aaron Solo Lopresti.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. You kind of soiled my intro by comparing me to Art, though. I was feeling pretty good about myself, and then you said, just as Art Thibert is. And I went,
Well, it's,
No, of course I'm joking. Art is incredibly talented, so we have great deal of respect for Art and his hair. Yes. As we have respect for your hair as well, Billy. So.
And my chin.
Your chin.
Well, speaking of chins, how about the most solid chin in comics? The no glass jaws here. A graduate of the Thibert School or an attendee of the Thibert School. I don't know if anyone ever graduates from the Thibert School.
They can't afford to.
They can't afford to. But the man who was out today shirtless fishing, is someone that could make Vladimir Putin weep and skulk off behind a tree in shame. The one, the only Sunshine Stater via Long Island, via Buffalo, New York. Big old Bills fan. Graham, the Fisherman Nolan. There
hey.
And then we have another guy, a man who is becoming another man who's become incredibly fit in the past few years. He's a sort of what we like to call what would we say? He's a southeastern Adonis, if you will, sporting a goatee like a comic book villain, but an incredibly a great talent in his own right, and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I believe his daughter just graduated high school this week. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. R. Andy First Man Smith.
Yes, she did. I have a high school graduate. Picked her diploma up today because, they don't give them to him on stage anymore.
No, so. Perfect. Well, we got a full house tonight. And what can be said about this man? He is the youngster among us. He is super badass. He's got bisexual mood lighting going all around behind him. He's a big, his favorite numbers are 420, I believe. And he is just killing it in the crowdfunding industry, and someone who's got a very storied past, worked with a variety of people, inked himself. Well, hell, why not bring him in? The one, the only, Fraga Boom! Hang on. There you go. Come on, StreamYard. Kaboom!
Welcome to my lair.
Yes.
Boom.
I have champagne.
Champagne.
I have champagne. Come, stay.
I feel
wow.
creeped out.
I have the pills Bill Cosby used. Come and stay.
Yeah, come, stay.
It's good to see you all. We have the pop culture vendor says, hail Andy. And hail Andy Smith.
What's
Another
up,
hail
Pedro?
Andy Smith. Another Andy. What is this? Look at
Paul,
this.
what's up, SDA? Good to see you guys. They probably all join me on my morning show I do.
Oh, there you go. Graham, how is everyone tonight, guys? I think everyone's pretty good.
Doing
great.
good.
Not all of us, we understand. And thank you, Aaron, for joining us. We know that you had a family emergency in the and we appreciate you joining us. And our thoughts and our prayers are all with you and your wife and your whole family.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we'll probably go. We're going to go till 8:30 to 8:20 today, roughly a little over an hour and 10 minutes, because Niall Scala is coming on following me with the Weekend Pop. So thank you all for joining us today. And as I said in the introduction, today is our discussion, are comic book inkers extinct? And what I mean by that is not inking per se, because we've all done that ourselves. We've all broken in as pencilers. I don't know if, Dan, if you broke in as a penciler. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so we all broke in as pencilers. We all love inkers. But we're going to go through, we're going to talk about inkers in general. We're going to talk about our favorite inkers that we had the privilege of working with. We're going to talk about inkers, our dream inkers, who we would love to ink with us. And then we're going to go into some inking horror stories, because every cartoonist, every penciler I know has them in spades. And then we're going to talk about the real issue here is whether or not someone can make a living breaking in, say, or even someone who's an established artist as a traditional inker, and that's all they do. So I guess, Art, maybe we'll start with you, because you are probably the best known for inking, because you've inked so much work in your career. And I don't know, give us a little thing about the inking craft, and also, tell us your story. Give us a good inking story. Let's hit with a good one. Who, have you had inkers ink you? Because I know you've known as an inker, or did you just ink yourself?
Yeah, I've had, I think that's probably the biggest decision why I started inking others, is because of the horror stories like you were talking about. So there is, when you pencil, there's a very specific thing that you envision, and I pencil the way I ink. People say that it's like you pencil the way you ink, and so line weights, everything would be there. So you're kind of always hoping that somebody's going to understand the style that you're penciling in, and it's going to be able to interpret that with the inks. But I mean, I broke in the 80s, the mid 80s, and there wasn't really a lot of that type of not so much respect, but I think the bottom line was just kind of getting the book done, making the deadlines, and style and things didn't really play too much into it until kind of the 90s, kind of like the West Coast invasion, that I was happy enough to be part of, in the early days. And so I think things started shifting over to where pencilers were very much more aware of the bottom line, which was the finished inks. Where before that they were kind of just like they were, you're going to be shouldered with this inker, or you're going to be teamed up with this inker, or whatever. And there wasn't really that much thought of like, is there compatibility? Is it this working? Is it not? So I think that came later. So, I have fallen victim, like you said earlier, of bad inks. And I think that's why I wanted to ink, is so, somebody wouldn't have that horror story, because I always have the utmost respect for all the pencilers I've worked with in the past. So I always wanted to make sure that they looked as good as they could. And so I broke in as a penciler and an inker on the same day. So I started working as an inker at Marvel, and I started working as a penciler at DC Comics. So I kind of have my foot into both arenas there.
Excellent. Aaron, how about you?
Well, if I was going to tell, like, what are we telling inking horror stories yet? Well, see, I can't because
do you guys want to? Well, let's be
No,
honest.
no, no,
You
no.
guys want to
No,
start
because
with the horror stories and then get more positive as we go?
I just wanted to preface it by saying I don't really want to throw anybody under the bus, so it's hard for me to like I name drop and say like, Art Thibert really screwed me over or
I
No,
knew.
I'm
I
kidding.
knew
How
that
did
was
you just
coming.
out him like that?
No, I'm kidding. But
Well, wait, I got to back up for 1 minute, Aaron, since you said that. Okay. I do remember we were looking over original pages and we were divvying them up, and you're looking at the pages and you're like, you know what? Your original inks on the boards are way better than they reproduce.
well, no, the funny thing is, now here's Matt Ryan is the same way, who you guys know has inked me for years, right? His inking is brilliant. And yet when I see this stuff reproduced, I look at it and go, God, this doesn't really look the way I want it to look. But then I get the original boards back and I'm like, these are freaking awesome. Where is the disconnect? Is it just the printing sucks? Is it just when it gets reduced, some of the nuances are lost? I mean,
are
it's
you
all
thinking like the finer details? A lot of the like say dry brush or like more air, things like that.
It's really bizarre to me, and maybe it's just the use of color over the top of black and white.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's color. Yeah,
it changes the look of the ink, so it comes out, and maybe the art looks different than you expected it to look when it left the table. So, but it's funny. Early in my career, I had a really frustrating time. Well, okay, first of all, I sucked as a penciler, right? So, so then I would say, well, when it gets inked, it'll look better. But it always looked worse to me, and I got hooked up with a lot of guys who were fine inkers, right? But I wasn't giving them enough. You know what I mean? It was like my pencils sucked, and it's like there's only so much, unless you got Kevin Nolan that's going to come in and redraw it and ink it for you. So maybe I had too high of expectations, and so I really worked on trying to develop my inking skills. And I'd always inked, when I got How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, right, which we all had at some point. I practiced inking as much as I did penciling almost growing up, but there's certain nuances and there's certain aesthetic to inking that it took me a while to pick up. And I eventually gravitated, when I first got my first real job, which was Sludge at Malibu, I had Gary Martin ink it because Gary was so slick. I wanted something that really looked refined and finished. And I studied under him to get the control I was looking for. And then the funny thing is, I sort of outgrew Gary because Gary was too slick. And then I wanted to kind of loosen up a little bit and get a little bit more, I don't know, that energy feel that guys like Art or Danny Mickey or Norm Rapman or some of those, pen guys from the Image days were bringing to the work that I thought was really cool. But it is an interesting concept because I know right now, getting back on topic, I know a lot of guys right now that are really good inkers and have been in the business a long time that are like contacting me going, hey, you got anything? You got anything? And it's like, I mean, it's hard enough. It's hard enough right now to keep yourself employed as a penciler to even think about, geez, how can I get a job where I can, get another inker involved? And it's like, not that it's, our responsibility as pencilers necessarily to keep inkers employed, but you work with guys, you're friends with them, you want to help, when you can, and you got 3 or 4 friends who are really good inkers and only one job, right? And so you're like, and then plus I ink myself a lot now too. So it's like, God, do I want to give this cover up, to let someone else ink it? And so you're kind of torn between this sort of, I want to help my friend out who needs an inking job, but geez, I need the money too. So I want to ink it myself.
Aaron, your inks over your pencils are brilliant. I really like your inks over your own pencils. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But I guess to wrap up the whole thing, at least in my introduction here to this, is that I think it's difficult, especially like you said, we're talking about digital inking coming in and playing a part, and digital coloring, and well, digital coloring has been around, but where, guys like, say, all of us sitting here, we literally can do everything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, and when you start doing that, you start, and those of us who write for ourselves as well, right? So now suddenly we're writing, penciling, inking, and maybe even coloring. And suddenly you've got all these guys that can do those individual jobs really, really well. But now that job opportunity is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And it's, as a creator, you're kind of like I said, you don't necessarily want to give up that control once you have mastered it, for example, or become good enough at it that you can do all these things. You kind of want to go old school and do everything yourself, so you can either stand on the merits of your work or die on the merits of your work, rather than saying, well, it looked really good and then so-and-so screwed it up in the inking, or so-and-so screwed it up in the coloring, or the reproduction sucked. If you can stand out there and do everything yourself, you get all the glory or you get all the blame. But I think a lot of us like that challenge. And so then it becomes, well, do we just eliminate 3 other people from working because we're doing everything ourselves? I mean, these become sort of almost like moral questions, don't they, that we have to deal with when, we're potentially taking work from other people by doing it all ourselves. And I don't know what the right answer is to that.
I don't think you're taking it from somebody else, though, when you're doing it yourself. I think taking it from somebody else is hearing about it and calling up the editor going, hey, I'll take that instead. That's taking work from somebody. Yeah. Just choosing to do it yourself isn't taking work from anybody.
Yeah. I think we're all in a place right now where we don't want to compromise anymore. You know what I mean? You have a career. You have a career of compromise. Yeah. And when I mean compromise, we've all done great work under duress and deadlines. But with what we're doing now, we don't have that as much, you know what I mean? So if you need something done, spend an extra hour, you'll put an extra hour and you'll make it look that much better, where when you worked at Marvel, DC, things like that, you just didn't have that kind of luxury.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I don't mean to overstate my turn here or take up too much time, but I think that's a difficult thing when you're looking for an inker, for example, is it's not a matter of, I used to say, like most of us did, right? Oh, that guy sucks, or that guy's good, or that guy whatever. But I've come to understand that it's really sort of, certain people do certain things really well. And sometimes things are good for your style, and sometimes they're not. So it's not necessarily, is this guy a good inker or a bad inker, or is this guy right for me? And that becomes kind of the challenge. And when you develop the ability to ink yourself, you can give yourself what you want. And then you don't have to worry about, like you said, of trying to communicate that and hope that someone else brings what you're hoping they'll bring to the table.
It's chemistry.
I think of it exactly. I think of it like music. You know what I'm saying? Like there can be a very talented drummer and a talented guitar player, but if one is coming strictly from heavy metal and the other one is sort of jazz based, they may not gel, or it may not sound good. But if you put another metal guitarist on the metal drummer, it's going to rock, and the other one's going to be smooth. And it's like Art says, chemistry. I always think of everything as music.
Yeah.
Same.
Graham, what do you say?
Well, I'm all about purity. I think in this, everybody should develop all their skills. We are storytellers first, and you should be able to learn. You need to practice your writing skills, your drawing skills. And let's face it, the inking skills are a technical skill that is necessary only because of the evolution of comics as a periodical. To make it printable by the old printing standards, we can print from pencils now.
Yeah.
But because the periodicals came out monthly, and in some cases in the 40s bi-weekly, and had multiple stories, the workload was such that you had to have a what do they call it, like Henry
assembly
Ford
line?
Assembly line. We had to have an assembly line to make those deadlines. Some guys like Eisner was able to do it all himself. And we can marvel at the purity of his art. Joe Kubert always insisted on inking his own work, but there was a time when he didn't. I saw a story, a Korak story that he had done that was inked by Russ Heath, And now Ross Heath is an amazing illustrator. My God, and his technical skills as an inker is incredible. But over Qbert, you had all the Qbert dynamics, and you had this slick finish on it, and there's something wrong about it. It didn't have that kinetic energy. So, you know, I like the purity of art. I like the concept to finish done by one guy. Now, that's not to say I haven't had great inkers. I have had great inkers. Some of the greatest in the business. When we name them later, I'll tell you who they were. And the guys that were my favorites are the ones that that I looked at the artwork when it came back to see how much better they made it and what it was. I deconstructed it, you know, and I looked at their ink line. I'm like, and I stole from that to develop my own inking style. You know, like, this is what I like here. This is what Klaus does that I like. This is what Dick does that I like. This is what blah, blah, blah does, you know. And that eventually became, you know, my own type of approach to inking. But it was always, or it evolved from wanting it to be slick and clean, you know, like a Joe Sinnott type thing. But I've always enjoyed the organic inkers.
Yeah,
the guys like I love Joe Sinnott, but I like John Romita as an inker better because Romita was more organic and a little bit more rough. And so those are the guys I look to, you know, so that the drawings that you can be constipated sometimes because you're penciling for another inker. You lose that kinetic energy in that drawing, and then you get this inker that's very organic, and he brings all that energy back.
Well, Frank Frazetta, I was lucky enough, and I swear this was actually, I had lunch with him. He said, pencil tight, ink loose. You know? So it's always the finished product. You want that movement in the finished product.
Right.
So that organic, that's kind of like what you're saying is organic. You need that movement. You need that energy. You need that feel. Because
don't trace it, draw.
Right.
Draw.
Yeah, and this is about movement. This is about energy. You know, so comic books should not be sterile. It should not be boring ever.
I heard an old adage of a good inker can make bad pencils good, and a bad inker can make great pencils shit.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Well, I remember, and I'm going to get to the thing about what Aaron was talking about inking your work while you're on a team book, while you're on a mainstream. All you guys broke into the mains, you know, through mainstream comics. I unfortunately couldn't. Nobody wanted to hire me, so I did my own book, which kind of worked out pretty well for me. But
is that why they call you Backdoor Billy?
Yeah, Backdoor Billy.
Oh, that why?
Is that why?
It means something different now, Graham.
I snuck in the back door and then I outsold them all. Boom! Thank you guys out there for that. But so I went and I had an inker. That'll go to my inking horror story. But for issue number 2, She Number 1 came out, and it really just blew up. And I met Michael Baer at a convention. I don't know if you know Michael Baer's art, a tremendous artist. Yeah. And Michael Baer wanted
an ass.
What's that?
He likes vaginas and ass.
Yes, he does.
No, that's I thought that was Beecham.
Oh, Beecham does. Yeah,
Michael Baer really too.
Does.
I think Baer is like that too. Yeah,
he is. Oh, okay. He was. And you know, so she loved the idea of it. And well, he asked if he could ink for me the figures. He would, and he took my art to a whole nother level. Incredible. I was like blown away by it. If you look at She Number 1 through She 6, and it just again, as you said, what an inker can do. If an inker could take his so pencils and make it great, a great inker. You can have a shitty inker could take your best pencils and turn it into a pile of crap.
I do think that all really great inkers can pencil on some level.
Yes, exactly it. They know how to draw. They know how to draw.
Yeah. That's what you've got to know how to draw. You've got to know form and lighting and all that stuff. Yep, it's not just about the tools.
Yeah, because it seems there are a lot of guys that broke into comics strictly as inkers, and a lot of them, and I heard this, you know, coming in, is that a lot of them became inkers because they couldn't break in as pencilers.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of them, journeymen like that running around and all, and very capable and all, but and that's kind of scary when you have someone that they are a pure inker, but they can't draw. That's a scary scenario. So
I got to be honest, if they just know how to use the tools and they don't really have any drawing ability, I don't even consider them an inker at that point. They're just tracing.
Yeah,
I'll tell you,
and they're not even doing a great job at
your stuff.
Right. I know one anomaly to that though, and that's Matt Banning.
Bat's great.
Holy shit! I don't think he can draw a lick, but that guy is kind of like just one of those. He just has it, man.
He gets it.
Yeah, he can throw down a line. He makes it move. He makes it interesting. There's expression. I don't think he can pencil a lick though.
Well, well, and going back to it, I was so fortunate when she first came out, because I then became friends with Jimmy Palmiotti too, and Jimmy just got my pencils. So Jimmy would kind of fit me in. I think Jimmy did part of issue number 4 or all of issue number 4 and maybe a little bit of issue number 6, because he became a buddy, and he's trying to fill in, trying to help me out. And he was another one that he just got it. He got my pencils. He knew the line weight I wanted and all. And Jim, like I said, with Jimmy and Mike, but then they both got busy. You know, Jimmy with Event took off. Michael Bear was inking everything at this time and drawing his own stuff. So that's when I decided to go directly for my pencils. And I spoke to Brian Haberlin at Top Cow, was doing the coloring, and I said, do you think we could scan these pencils in and go to pencil? And he's like, yeah, why not? And we gave it a shot. And I think from the She versus Tomo issue of She, the first She series, 96, I really haven't used a lot of inkers since then. It's really been my pencils going direct to ink, to colors. And it worked out. But we'll get to that in a minute. But what I wanted to talk to you, Aaron, and if you guys agree with this, about Aaron, you were saying, am I taking work from someone else by inking my own stuff? And then you started going with the economics of it all, because also, Aaron, if you just ink your cover, right? Say you do the cover and you ink the cover or a page, you could sell that page and it's all yours. Mm-hmm. So you have an issue, you have the time, you have 22 pages and you get all of that aside from the heartbreak of splitting your pages. Right? You know, the inker gets 2, you get, and it's like, oh God. And maybe some of your favorite pages, or a page you just love, the inker gets it. The editor gives it to the inker, and he's like, I'm not giving up this page. I love this page, right? I mean, have you guys experienced anything?
I've been lucky enough for all the inkers I've worked with, and this goes all the way back to when I broke into the business. I usually will call them up, because it was before email and stuff, just to introduce myself, say, hey, looking forward to working with you, whatever. And I just ask them, I go, hey, once we get our art returns, do you want to get on the phone and do our own split? And everyone's been like, yeah, we can do that.
That's cool.
So I've been lucky that way. And then 2 books I did at DC, Ray Snyder inked over me. And this was within the past 15 years. And I stopped selling my art, over 20 years ago. So I always, when I work with an inker, I would email them and say, hey, I don't sell my stuff. I'm just asking, if you do plan on selling your portion, could you give me first dibs? And most of them do, but Ray Snyder was like, dude, you can just have it. So I have both the full issues that Ray and I did together.
That's sweet.
For the 2 books at DC.
Nice. Now, Dan, how was it over at Image? If you worked for Extreme Studios or something, did the studio keep it? Did Rob keep your art? How did that, or did you guys do this?
No, we got our art back. I mean, we did a traditional split. It was like 2 to 1. That was the split. That's just how it was. And with guys in the studio, sometimes we have that talk. Like, we have the stack there, and you pick 2, you pick 1, you pick 2, you pick 1, or you now pick 2 and I pick 1. But it is, as long as the ratio was there, it was very diplomatic, and most of the time we were happy. Every now and then you're like, oh, don't go. Okay, let's trade.
Like flipping baseball cards.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know how DC, like, I always liked the way DC would split art, which was not you, Mr. Thibert, but artwork. Because I know how they would split you. Anyhow, they would take pages. So like the first book you did, say it's in issue 1, they would go, okay, the first 14 pages go to, Andy, the last 7 go to the inker. The second issue, it would be 7 to me, 7 to the inker, the middle 7 to the inker, the last 7 to me. And then the third issue would be the first 7 to the inker, the last 14 to me. Whereas Marvel would look at it and be like, okay, there's a splash page. So I kind of respect this, at least from the, being a penciler, but they'd go, okay, there's a splash page that goes to the penciler. Then they would take the remaining 20 pages, shuffle them up like cards, put them face down, and then just go 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. At least and I saw them do it the few times I was up there. So you never knew what you were getting back at Marvel.
Well, no, wait a minute. Didn't they have the when I was there, they did they were still doing the art department split up,
Right.
Because you had to send the pages in. They would give like one issue, like the penciler, say the first issue, would get the first 2/3 of the comic, and then the inker would get the last third. And then the next issue, the inker would get the first third, and the penciler would get the last 2/3. And they just split it up like that. So the inker got, a splash page every once in a while.
I mean, they might have switched.
In the day, splash pages were always on the first page, right?
Right.
Not in the middle of the book.
Well, both those things are true.
The problem with that is that if you've got a 2-part story or 3-part story, one guy's always going to get the talking head pages, and the other guy is always going to get, because of how a story is structured.
Right.
I had that happen to me so many times on Detective Comics, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, every time the pages come back, I don't get Batman pages. I get Commissioner Gordon pages, No,
that's true. That's the nice thing about we actually got to the point where we were sending scans in instead of the original pages, because then you could sit there and, if you had if you had a decent inker, a decent person as an inker, you call them up and okay, let's split these up. And, it was pretty fair. Usually you might get in a fight once in a while about over a page or two and who deserves what. But for the most part, at least you wouldn't get stiffed like Graham's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of that, so that seems that could be hit or miss, right? That whole split thing.
Well, there's another factor too, though, that I find interesting, and I had heard stories. I'm not going to name names, but like certain artists, and I understand it. It's price control, right? Like, as a penciler, you can say, "Hey, I saw my splash with Wolverine on it. That's a $500 page. That's what I sell them for." And your inker could be over at his table at some other convention on the other side of the country with a Wolverine splash page and be selling it for $150 and devaluing your sale.
Yeah, that was a big deal for me as well. I always talk to my inkers, and whether they listen to me or not, I didn't know, but I was like, dude, if you're going to sell this stuff, these are the prices I'm asking. Make sure that you are asking the same thing I am, so you don't undercut me. And the problem is a lot of inkers don't value the work as much as the penciler does.
Right.
That's just a fact. Some do, some don't. You get guys like Danny Mickey and guys that are super high end that have really, are on big projects all the time. They know the value of those pages, right? But a lot of times if you're doing, stuff like I was doing, like Metamorpho or, whatever, and I had a great relationship with Matt Ryan. I tried to, let him know, keep it in this price range kind of thing. And he was pretty agreeable to that. But I've also had guys undercut me too, because, hey, 5 for 100, 5 pages for $100.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then they'd sell your stuff, and you're like, I'm trying to get $300 or $500 for this splash.
That's
page.
when I go and buy them back.
5 pages.
Right. That's when you go buy them back.
Yeah. Except they never tell you, right? You just somebody comes up to your table and goes, "Hey, will you sign this?" You go, "Oh yeah, I drew that. Where'd you get it?" "Oh, I got it from the inker." "What'd you pay?" $20. You're like,
"Oh, I know." Well, speaking of that, and Dan not naming any, that Dan refuses to name names. Graham,
what?
Tell us an inking horror story. Let's get. I'm looking at that beautiful work of art behind you, and I believe that's Kirby with Vince Coletta.
Well, I thought it was Coletta. I don't think it is now that I think about it.
Chick Stone, maybe.
No, it's not Stone either.
Milgram.
Is it not Senate?
No, it's long before that.
It's got to be Senate then, doesn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't it be Senate?
No, it's before Senate. It's from Fantastic Four number 40. So
I
you
thought
guys,
it-
you guys in the comment section, look that up and tell us who the inker is.
Gators, maybe?
All I know is there's no line weights on that outline. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well, that
looking it up
drives you-
now on my
that drives
phone
you
because now I'm
crazy,
curious.
doesn't
Yeah. That's
So-
a great issue. That's a great issue.
Number
So-
4.
Okay. So inking horror stories.
Yeah, let's.
Um
Come on, Graham. You know you got it. We're leading.
You know,
up.
in the beginning part of my career, you know, because I broke in my first sale was a project that I wrote, illustrated, and inked, and I thought this is how it's going to be done. Joe Kubert once told the students, you know, always insist on inking your own work. A, you get more royalties. B, you get more money, and you're busier, and the purity of the art. And all of that is true. And when after that first sale, I found out it doesn't quite work that way, you know, with an assembly line process. So I always had a lot of inkers that I felt like, you know, didn't understand what I was doing with my pencils. And yeah, when I was on the Atom in particular, you know, my pencils had evolved enough to where they were actually pretty good. The storytelling was good. The drawing was pretty solid. And particularly women, you know, I did a lot of effort into making stylized looking women in the Bob Oxner vein type of thing. And then inkers would come over and ugly them up. And that would drive me nuts. The other thing that would drive me nuts too was walleyes. You know, the soul of your character is their eyes. And, you know, all of a sudden you've got, you know, these walleyes. And you know what? You know who used to do that all the time? Yeah. You know who used to do that all the time? Al Williamson.
Really?
Al was this great illustrator. But you look at some of his strip work and inking work, you know, sometimes the eyes get dead and they get a little wall-eyed looking, like one is off looking off in the other direction.
You know who did that as a penciler? Mark Bagley. Notoriously, the eyes would not sync up. So
Really?
yeah, so there's an inking technique. I always when I teach, it's like you don't have to redraw the eye. All you have to do is determine which side of the line you ink on. So if the one eye needs to be moved over, ink on this side of the line. If the eye needs to be moved over this way, then ink on that side of the line. And what you'll end up doing is you'll end up creating
Drawing them closer.
perfect. Yeah.
And
There you go, all you youngsters out there, inking tips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of fish eyes, and that TJ James and a couple of guys are saying, Graham,
It is.
that was
Yeah.
indeed
Yeah.
Face Coletta, who you suspected earlier on.
Yeah, I originally thought it was Coletta, but then when I kept looking at that picture there, it didn't have that scratchiness that Coletta has. But yeah, it is him. Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe he cared that day.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe he fucked up the next panel.
So, hey, Dan, what about you, buddy? You come in with your incredibly detailed pencils when you broke in, as you still do.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, with all your lines
Yeah.
where you tell the shading.
I've got a
What happened?
couple horror stories, but like, you know, some of them had to deal with expressions. You know, expressions are you can change an expression with a line thickness. You know, you can change an expression, especially in the mouth, by just slight adjustments. And
I know.
I'm not a fan of having my faces changed.
Mhm.
But
That's why I
had
did my own faces from the beginning.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Liefeld's the same way. There's only like 3 people he'll let ink his faces: himself, me, and some other guy. Art Thibert. Art Thibert was allowed to, but Danny wasn't. Danny, he wouldn't let Danny ink the faces or any of that other stuff, because yeah, it is sometimes when you're hyper focused and you spend so much time on that expression, it can change. But I did a job and my stuff. You know, as I study terminology of stuff, I think my stuff kind of falls in the cartoony realism. Like there's a degree of realism to my stuff with form and things. I consider light a bit, but I like stylizing stuff. I like making things just a little different because my favorite guys are that way. And I had this worked on this job where this inker redrew all of my trees. He redrew some of the feet and some other things, and I didn't even see it. He felt the need to call me up and tell me all the things I was doing wrong.
And then he didn't fix it. Did he tell you?
That he was going. He is in the process of fixing it.
Oh my God!
Damn.
And I'm just like, yo, man, like I draw this way because I draw this way. This isn't me being ignorant. I know what a tree looks like. This is how I decided to draw a tree.
Right.
You know. So there was that. You know, and there was I'll name this story because it's funny. When Danny Mickey first came to the studio, he wasn't the Danny Mickey we all know and love today. I mean,
you mean when he came from my studio to?
That's exactly what I mean. Danny was the very first guy to ink me that where I wasn't inking myself, and we had done this this pinup in Brigade Number 2. It was the very first time I ever saw print. I was very, very hyper focused on how good it was, and I penciled super tight. And I wanted these rocks down below to have this sort of soft volcanic rock feel to them, and you know. And Danny brought it back, and he did these sort of crispy, like crunchy lines, and completely changed my rocks.
Now, why do these guys feel that they compelled to do that?
Well, I don't know, but like I said, he goes, what do you think? I go, man, this is great, but you changed my rocks. And now that's like anytime Danny and I talk, like we always go, you changed your rocks. I go, you fucking changed my rocks. It's like, here it is almost 30 years later, and we still laugh about it. But you know, when it comes to inking in general, like I was listening to what Graham was saying and what inking originally facilitated, which was to be able to print it on a print press, and that, you know, the technology of the time. But eventually it evolved. You know, I started buying comics in '84, kind of a late bloomer. I was aware of John Byrne's X-Men, but I came to like his stuff on other stuff. And one of the things I noticed was anytime I'd feel like he was different, it was because his inker. This is when I started realizing about inkers. And then I started seeing the works of Art Adams, Rick Leonardi, and there was this issue of it was either X-Men Annual 9, I believe it was, where it wasn't Terry Austin. Terry Austin had done the summer special, and then it was all hands on deck, like Mignola ink pages, Art Adams ink pages, Al Gordon, like it was all hands on deck. And you could actually like see the difference. And as a kid, I realized like, yo, this guy, Terry Austin, I like him when he inks Barry Smith. I like him when he inks Walt Simonson. And a lot of my favorite jobs happen to be Terry Austin jobs. So that's when I realized like this guy has sort of a sweet sauce, you know, like he sauces stuff up. And then the next guys that come in, and I'm not just saying this, Art knows how I feel. The next guys that had secret sauce were Scott Williams and Art Thibert. And like even the guys at Extreme that came in, they were very much trying to be in the Art Thibert, Scott Williams world. And guys like Norm and Danny and Larry Stucker and a lot of the amazing talents we had in there came from these schools, and it became, as a penciler, desirable. You wanted that peanut butter with your chocolate, because in your mind your finished product was the Reese's, you know, like that's what you saw. And a lot of times, you know, when you are saddled with somebody that they're great technically but they don't quite compliment you, it's like chocolate and sushi, you know. It's like, hey, sushi's great and chocolate's great, but I don't want chocolate sushi. You know. But yeah, my horror story is just my biggest horror story was the time the inker decided to call me and tell me how I don't know how to draw.
Wow.
And that they were fixing it, you know.
Wow. Hey, Andy, who ruined your work?
Well, it's funny. I don't know the person's name, because what happened was, and I've got two stories, but I had to help out. I didn't have to, but I was asked to help out on, I think, 6 or 7 pages of an issue of Cable back in the late 90s. And the rest of the book was drawn by Stephen Platt. So I was like, okay, I'll just ink the stuff myself because you'll get it quicker, since it's kind of a rush thing. They're like, all right, that's fine. So I inked the stuff myself, and I was pretty, happy with it for the amount of time I had to do the 6 or 7 pages. And it's cable, so I'm like, all right, I get to draw cable. The book comes out, and apparently, not like they couldn't fathom this before they hired me. They realized when the pages came in, so you were still mailing them up, that they didn't match up with all the line work type of stuff that Stephen Platt was doing at the time, right? All his over rendering and stuff. So they had somebody in the bullpen go in on the originals, not on paste ups, but on their original art, and add all this line work to everything.
That's disrespectful. That is so disrespectful.
And yeah, because usually, like I did on a few jobs for Marvel, whenever they had to fix like a costume mistake or whatever, they would do it on a paste up. So if you wanted, you could pull it off, because they used rubber cement, so you could yank it right off. Right. No, all this shit was done right on the originals. And since I inked it, I got all the pages sent back to me. I've never done this since then. 6 pages. Yeah, it was 6 pages. I tore every one up and threw them away.
That may be the worst story I've ever heard. Like,
wow.
That's horrible.
I tore every page up. I've never done that. I was so upset. When the book came out, I was like, this is garbage. Whenever it's not a job to where if somebody brings it to me at a con, I won't sign it. I mean, I will because they're the fan, but I don't like looking at it. But yeah, I tore every page up, and I've never done
Wolverine
that.
Cable. Which one was this?
No, it was an issue of Cable.
Okay.
Did you say who the anchor was? Did I miss it?
I don't know. It was somebody in the bullpen at Marvel.
Oh, it was bullpen. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then another story real quick, and this isn't somebody that ruined anything or whatever. This is after the fact. I did it, and I'll mention the name too, because I just, he's passed on, and
this is Brofessionals, man. We mention names. We fear no man.
No, I'm going to mention his name because I'm mentioning his name because it pissed me off so bad. But I'll tell the story first.
Well, then you go to a lesson, whomever that is.
I was hired to do, and I'm actually talking about the job tomorrow on my stream in the morning. But an issue of Justice League. They did DC like 10 years ago. Did these retroactive books. So, and they were just one shots, and it took place 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. So for some reason, they hired me to draw the Justice League story from the 70s, even though I was a youngster in the 70s, and it's like, okay, I mean, I appreciate it, but I wasn't, because they were trying to team up people from that generation. So I'm like, okay, I like the team. So it's a cool Justice League team. So anyhow, it was a one-shot, double-sized book, and I can't remember. I drew all the superhero stuff, and then they hired another artist to draw all the plain clothes stuff. So I won out on the deal because I got to draw all the heroes in costume. Anyhow, they asked me to do the cover, and I said, look, since this is supposed to be a 70s type of book, how about I do breakdowns on the cover, and we get somebody from that era to ink it, right? Because I thought that would just be cool, and it would tie it into the 70s, because I did the cover with the main image down the front and the floating heads on the side, just like the 70s Justice League.
Dude. Yeah, nice.
And they're like, yeah, who you thinking? And I said, I don't know, let's get Ernie Chan. Screw it. I know he's old. I know he's up there. I know it's probably not going to be up to par, but I will own a Justice League cover that I drew inked by Ernie Chan. Because if you do the cover on one book, on a one shot, the penciler gets it. Mm-hmm. So they do there were no art returns because I scanned everything in. So like months go by and I call up DC and I'm like, where's my cover? Because I mailed the original. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, where's my cover? The art return. Oh, we sent that. Ernie said it was his.
Oh, no.
What are you talking about? Ernie said it was his. You guys know how art returns work. He inked me. It's the first cover we ever did, which means it's mine. If we inked 3 covers, he would have got the 3rd one. This is mine. They're like, sorry. So I email Ernie and I go, hey, Ernie, there's a little mistake. That cover is actually mine. Could you send it to me? And he goes, he writes back, and I've never talked to the man. I don't know how well his English is. His email didn't seem like he was good at it. And he writes back, he goes, I'm sorry to hear that. If you want, I can recreate it for you for $500.
Oh,
What did he sell
I wrote
it?
him back. Ernie said that to me. So I wrote him back and I go, you want me to pay you $500 because he sold it. That's why.
Yeah.
He goes, I'd send it back, but I already sold it.
Mm.
And I go, so you want me to pay you $500 to ink the cover that you never should have got in the first place? I'm not doing
Insanity.
that. So then he writes me back and he goes,
Man.
how about I send you half of the money that I sold it for? And I'm thinking, well, how about you send it all? And I said, fine, send me half the money then. So he sent me half the money he sold it for.
and
So
You talk about like no good deed going.
So honestly,
punished.
I know he's passed away now. He passed away a few years ago, but I tell you what, I don't care. I will always mention his name in that story because when he said, if he would have said, I'll recreate it for you, I'll just recreate it for you. I'm sorry. I'd be singing his praises.
Yeah.
When you were laying the hammer down on him, Andy, and you called him up and you said, is this Ernie Chan? Did he say, no, this is Ernie Chua? You have the wrong number?
No, I didn't call him. It was all through email. So no, I didn't. I never called him. It was all through email.
This is Ernie Chua. You have wrong number.
Oh man.
Let me balance Andy's horror story. I called up. I was doing some stuff for Valiant, and this was way back in the mid to late '90s. And they asked me if I, to do a cover or a pinup. I can't remember. I think it might have just been a pinup. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I'll do it. I said, but I want Rudy Nebrez to ink it.
That was a cover.
Yeah, was it?
We talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it at CrossGen.
Well,
we talked about it at CrossGen.
Yeah, but it was a visitor, and I don't know if it was I don't think, maybe it was. It doesn't matter. But
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So anyway, the editor's like, oh God, he's like, I don't want to use Rudy. He's kind of a, he's kind of a, well, I don't know if I should say Rudy's still alive, but this guy was basically painting Rudy not to be this great guy. He's kind of a pain in the butt, and we don't, I would rather not. And I said, look I want an original piece of Nebrez artwork, so at least ask him if he'll do it. So according to this guy, he asked, said, hey, Aaron Lopresti's doing this thing. And he had no idea who it was, I'm sure. And he said, he wants you to ink it. And I guess Rudy's response was, why? So we can sell it for more money or something like that, right? And this editor got a little indignant with him and said, no, because he's a big fan of your work. And he went, all right, I'll do it. So I sent the thing in and he inked it, and it was brilliant. And I got it back. So I still have it over there. I have my Rudy Nebrez, but I had to coerce the editor to make Rudy do it because apparently he, who knows? Rudy may have responded that way because he had jacked him around before. I don't know, but it's still sitting over there in my portfolio. And the only regret I have is that it wasn't a Turok piece. It was like that Batman alien visitor character they had. So put a bunch of gremlins in it and monsters so he could Rudy it up. And he did. He changed the chick's face completely, and my face was better, but that was okay. He I eyeballed the perspective, so it was a little bit off, and he fixed it. It was one of those things. And then, of course, what Rudy does, he redraws everything, right? But I wanted a Rudy Nebrez original, so I didn't give a rip if he redrew the whole thing because I still thought it looked cool. And so that's my balance to Andy's horror story with Ernie Chan. Mine with Rudy Nebrez actually worked out. So,
look at that. Now, Graham Nolan.
That's funny.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Graham Nolan. Which inker, if you saw him tomorrow, would you punch in the face?
Well, that one's easy.
No.
That one's easy. It'd be Art to Bear.
I had to.
Not because I have anything against Art.
I was going to click Art solo, and I was going to, when I asked that question, I was just going to have Art just solo, and you beat me to it.
oh,
Art is fucking T-Bear.
I knew I was going to get picked on.
All right, come on, Graham. You got a horror story. I know you have.
Well, we talked about face changes and stuff, and this isn't really a horror story, but this is a one of those where the inker was overpowering and he changed the faces. Bob McLeod is an incredible inker, and I love his work. And I liked what he did on the stuff that he inked with me too. But my Batman has a specific look. And when he finished drawing the Batman figures, the Batman faces looked like Bob McLeod Batman faces. And they didn't look like mine. And so I called up the editor and I said, Scott, I can't live with this. I need you to send those pages to me so I can redraw the faces again and ink them myself. And he sent them back, and let me put my stamp on it. So it's not really a horror story. It's just that, it was something I couldn't live with, in that particular instance, because it was the character that, I was known for. And, I didn't want it to go out thinking people thinking that that's the way I drew that face.
That's great. With your vast body of work, that's great. If that's kind of your most uncomfortable experience, that's pretty great.
It really is. I mean, I haven't, there's been times I've been unhappy with Inker's work. And some guys, their skill levels were just incompatible with what I was doing. As I said, as my work got more and more organic, for example, Scott Hanna and I started together on Detective, and he had a very linear approach to things, and the way I was drawing it was linear too, and that's why he's such a great inker on JRJR, because he interprets that so well. But I started to go more organic, and I felt that the inking wasn't looking as full of life as it used to, because I was going in a different direction, and his style wasn't working. So I decided I was going to emulate a JRJR style and see if that didn't work out better. And it did. There was, I think, 4 issues. It started with the Troika storyline in Detective, and then it went into the reimagining of the Penguin story and all that kind of stuff, where I was doing that kind of linear approach to things. And I really liked what it looked like, but it wasn't how I wanted to draw the stories. I wanted to go and do more organic stuff. And then that's when we started to change inkers, and we started getting more organic guys like Tom Palmer and Klaus Janson and guys like that.
Well, now, and Dan, I want to bring this to you because Graham brought up JRJR, John Romita Jr. He is the perfect example of a penciler. You'll have like that are working today. So you have John Romita Jr. You have Greg Capullo. You've got Silvestri. Guys like that their pencils really are geared to inkers, and it really enhances their work per se. But do we think today, aside from those guys, and there are a few of them, they've been penciling though for 30 years. These guys. Top of the game, fantastic artists, but and they have their inkers that they've been working with for a very long time, that they're team ups with Jim Lee, with Scott Williams, if you will. But what about today, Dan? Is there a career for someone who wants to break into comics as an inker?
Yeah, my answer
is a dedicated inker who will ink, who will just be like a Denny Miki who inks over pencilers.
I think yeah. There are really talented guys like Delso Corona, Shelby Robertson, who's inking my book. There are guys out there that they bring added value, and if anybody wants to come into this business as solely an inker, the main thing is to bring added value, and that's by understanding light, understanding what the form is. Guys like you brought up Kevin Nolan earlier. He's a guy who understands form. He's kind of like the second coming of Wally Wood in that way, where Wally, you know, he could come on to somebody and ink them, and there you go, change their stuff like he did, you know, the Sky Master stuff over Kirby. I didn't know that was Kirby until I looked at the credits, you know.
Yeah.
And you get guys like that. Guys, you know, Norm Ratman was one of the guys that was a C+ penciler, but like an A, grade A inker. And there, you know, there's, I think, my favorite inker on my stuff is me, right? But I'm also very slow. That's the thing, is I slow down to a crawl because I'm meticulous. There are guys out there that that are able to, like I said, enhance and be part of the final product. You know, like Jim and Scott. The reason why Jim Lee and Scott Williams are together like that is because of how much Scott brings to things. You know, and it's like Klaus Janson on Frank Miller. The only other person that inked Frank Miller as good as Klaus is Frank Miller. You know, there are certain teams that are out there, and I think for an inker, there are plenty of pencil samples out there on the internet, and now you can do blue lines and practice on them. But again, you know, there's technically good, and I've had technically good guys ink my stuff, but nothing beats someone like Shelby, who I told Adelso, and I believe this, Adelso is like if you took Terry Austin and Scott Williams and smashed them together. You look at Shelby, he feels like Scott Williams and Klaus Janson bashed together, because Shelby is not afraid to put those heavy underlines and contrasts against lines. It's an art form. I don't think it's going away. You know, bringing up Graham's point about how they're not necessarily needed as part of the process. Yes, you can go from pencils. A lot of guys are doing it digitally now. And, you know, there's no original, you know, there are guys that, like, every process, it's interesting to talk to guys. I was talking to Dale Keown, and Dale was saying that he pencils on paper but inks digitally, where my process is completely opposite. I pencil digitally, but I make sure the inks are like analog. I want that. There are things you can do with a brush that you can't get out of digital.
Well, inking, I always say, is a performance. So when you're working on it, it's a performance. When you're penciling your writing, that's a craft. That's, you have an eraser, you have delete buttons, you can do multiple sweeps at it. Inking is like a performance. You're on stage. It's like when you're inking on board, it's like boom, boom, boom. Mistakes, whatever, it's all there. You know, that's your performance for that night. You know what I mean? And that's it. And that's the great part about actual tangible inks, is because there is no, you know, redo button. There is none of that. You know, it really is that raw emotion. It's that energy that you put down at that moment in time that is the performance.
Yeah, there's another guy we haven't mentioned at all, and I think later in the late 80s and early 90s, he kind of lost his flavor. But Joe Rubenstein has been like at the helm of a lot of really classic shit, you know. So
the late 70s, 80s, early 90s. He was a dude.
Yeah, so I give Joe love too. It's like, you know, Terry, Klaus, Rubenstein, then came Art and Scott. Their new guys are like Shelby and Adelso. Bat, of course, Joe Weems. These guys, they add to it. They make it better. You know, I used to pine after Joe Weems inks. You know, I was one of the first guys he inked when he came from Harris, and then he just took off. And like,
that dude, the funny story, Joe Weems and I were online. I met Joe Weems at San Diego Comic-Con in 1993. We were both online. Like at the Harris booth.
Oh, wow.
Trying to get work. And we struck up this conversation. And what a great guy, incredibly talented guy. And well, hell, wouldn't you know it? You know, he got the work, I didn't. And then next year at San Diego, he came to my booth, you know, like, wow, you know, like we're both working, you know, it was pretty cool.
But the long story short is I still feel that they're necessary. And part of it is there. While I agree with the purity that comes with sole authorship, writing, penciling, inking, even coloring, while I think that is the purest form and all that, there are times that being able to hand that, like, do something, move so fast and hand it off and know it's in good hands, and it's somebody that's plussing the stuff. Like, I absolutely think anytime I send something to Shelby, when I get it back, I'm like, God damn, this is beautiful. I don't know. There's something really unique about that magic.
Well,
It's
think
like
about this,
jamming.
Dan. Think about this, okay? So if Shelby spends 6 to 8 hours inking, that's more hours that you can spend penciling if you're not inking.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Or at least you have the opportunity of spending an extra hour or two if you're not inking it. So if there is somebody that can plus or enhance what you put down as a penciler, then it kind of makes sense to me. I remember I had a conversation, something like this, with Scott Hanna, and Scott's like, it's like, I inked X amount of pages, a day, and I don't use assistants. Like, he'd always pride himself because, I use assistants. Right. And he always pride himself like that. And I go, well, I have assistants that put down ruled lines and fill in blacks. That's it. I said that might take 2 or 3 hours off of my day. That's 3 hours now that I have to pay more attention to the inks at hand. And anybody can really do those jobs. I said, so who's really making out in the end? Like, he has the pride of a complete, a completed job. But in the end of the day, I either have 3 hours to myself or 3 hours I can invest in something else. So it's just a different way of looking at, like, that's his sense of pride. I finished it, I began it, I did every step of the process. But for me, it's like, well, it doesn't make sense.
Let me offer a quick counterpoint to Dan, and I agree with everything that Dan and Art has said. That an inker that brings something to the table is invaluable. Guys like Danny Mickey, they ink my stuff. It looks totally different than when I would ink it. But I love it. He does stuff that I can't do or don't do. But here's the real answer to the question, Billy, is that it doesn't matter, because if you look at some of the work that's going on right now, look at George Jimenez right now for DC. You look at that stuff and go, this is really cool. Wow, how's he getting that texture? Oh, wait, he's digitally inking it himself. Finch is now digitally inking himself. Everything is moving in technology, is moving forward, which is going to leave us dinosaurs in the dust. And the other thing is, you have big companies. What are they doing? Cutting costs. Who's the easiest person to cut out of the loop? The inker, because they can scan the pencils. So it's not a matter of do we need good inkers. It's a matter of will there be jobs for good inkers.
Well,
in 10 years from now, if that's even going to exist.
And I agree, because the people coming into the industry now, artists now, do the whole ball of wax. And I don't mean the coloring as well. I mean pencils and inks, basically. Yeah. Some do all things, but most of the people coming in, like Jimenez, do the whole thing. And there are pencilers that have to be inked, like Dan Jurgens, but Dan's not going to be working forever. And pencilers like that are going to eventually stop working or whatever. The new crop is coming up doing the pencils and inks themselves. Exactly right. So, I mean, if somebody came up to me and was like, I don't want to get into business as an inker, I'd be like, don't. Yeah,
and guys like John Romita, who are drawing 12, 13 books a year, they're going to be a thing of the past. So the question is, as we're winding down now, because we do have the Pop XPs following up with the Weekend Pop at 9:30, but I got to put it out to my panel, and we'll start with Graham. But guys, is the future of inkers, is it bright or is it black?
It's Pelican ink black.
Yeah, I say it doesn't look good.
Yeah,
in the long run. In the long run.
Dan,
I disagree. Because there's still going to be a faction of people that want to have an original at the end. There's still pencilers like me that
I don't mean inking. I mean inkers.
No, I think there's still going to need to be them, but there's definitely less seats on the bus. There's definitely less seats, but I think that in those instances, the cream will rise to the crop, and if somebody has the passion for it, they're going to be the answer to somebody's question.
Yeah.
So if that's what they want, that I would not dissuade is not a real word. Discourage. I would not discourage anybody that wants to be an inker from inking, because there's always going to be a need for good guys out there. Jorge Jimenez is a great example. Pepe Larraz, John Malin. But I think all of us here still want an artifact at the end.
Yeah.
That stuff's going to be way more valuable. Yeah. I could literally, I pencil so tight, my Black Flag stuff, I could print from those digital pencils, no problem. But I don't want that. I want what Shelby brings, and I want that artifact at the end.
Well, in the end, even digital, you're emulating a traditional ink line. You know what I mean? When you pencil, you're penciling for a traditional ink line over it. So the history of inks, the look, will always exist in comics. And I agree with you, Dan. I think I've always said this when people come to me at cons, they go, well, Marvel said there's no openings. DC said there's no openings for, X, Y, Z. And I go, there's no openings if you're mediocre. I said, if you're exceptionally good, they will make an exception and they will hire you. So if you have just an inker that just has this great line, right? He can't pencil a lick, right? But he can ink the shit out of anything. I think they're going to give him work because they know he's going to make somebody look great. You know what I mean? There's still that combination.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I just think it's so few and far between.
Yeah, we're making the assumption that the two big companies are still going to be around to be hiring.
Exactly. No, seriously, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
It's not, again, you guys are talking about, do we need good inkers because they look great and they help? Yes. Are there going to be an opportunity for them? That's a different question.
Well, then you could say that about the entire industry then. You could say writers, pencilers, colorists, everybody that works on a comic book in an assembly line kind of process, they would all be on the chopping block, with that argument.
Well, and they are. I mean, I think the takeaway here is that you have to position yourself as a jack of all trades, or rather a master of all trades, if you want to succeed in this business the way the business is spiraling down the drain right now. You have to be that end all and be all, the writer, the artist. You have to have all those skills. Dan's right. Some guys are going to need inkers, but those inkers aren't going to be self-contained inkers that just wanted to be inkers. They're complete artists that maybe they can't get a gig right now, but they have the inking skills and they'll do it.
Yeah. Now, Dan, you're not inking Black Flag?
No, Shelby is.
Great. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, well, guys, I'll do a show of thumbs. Is the future of mainstream or dedicated comic book inkers bright, or is it black? For those who say it is bright, give a thumbs up. And for those of you who think it's black, give a thumbs down. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And one last thing, Dan Fraga, could you look off to the side for a second and point to the future?
Let me use a lot of words so I could be stalling while I do this.
No, you're looking very Vladimir Lenin right now, isn't he?
Lenin.
Lenin. Yeah, look at that.
There it is.
There's a little Orson Welles in there too. There's a little Orson Welles in there too.
Well,
Billy, we never discussed.
Well, for those
Billy,
who
we never discussed. You didn't ask us of any era what inkers you wanted to have on you.
Thank you, Graham Nolan. So let's go, Graham Nolan. Any inker in history, give us 3 names of inkers or 2 that you would have died to ink for you.
Frank Giacoia, John Romita Sr., and Bob Oxner.
Oh, nice.
I would love to have those guys.
Aaron?
Danny Mickey, who I've worked with on occasion, and Frank Frazetta.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you took one of mine.
that's one of mine too.
You say art?
Yes.
Dick Giordano, who actually did ink a Human Target story over my pencils, so I have been inked by him. It's never been published though. Lynn Wein wrote the story as well, and so I still have the pencils and inks here, the complete book. And then Kevin Nolan, which did when Kevin and I would do cons together, I would always pencil something and I would just slide it over to him and then he'd ink it up. So I do have a few pieces that Kevin Nolan has inked, like con drawings of mine.
I gotta show him.
But that, and then I think like Barry Windsor Smith, I would just like to see that guy just throw some bloopy lines over my my work and just stylize the hell out of it. I think that'd be a blast.
Nice. Yeah. I'll go with me since I'm hosting. Noel Sickles.
Ooh.
You know, I mean, Bill Sienkiewicz.
I've had that.
Right?
I've had that. Yeah.
And geez, you know, I'm a huge fan. Someone posted Wrightson, so I'll stay away. Jiminy Cricket posted Wrightson, so I'm not going to name him. But I love that Frazetta-esque dry brush effect. Man, would I love Mark Schultz taking a turn.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That would look cool. That would actually look really cool, Billy.
That would look awesome.
Dan, what do you think?
Okay. Wally Wood, Terry Austin, and Art Thibert.
No, look at
Hasn't Art inked you before? Oh, okay.
One time.
Oh, okay. So Joe Kubert.
Yeah.
So Kubert, Joe Sennett, so two Joes, and Kevin Nolan, who I always pester.
Nice. Graham, is there anyone in the whole world who you wouldn't want to ink your work?
Don't you fucking say me.
My punching bag.
No, just kidding. No, Dan, it would be an honor. Graham and I were talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, I knew you were setting me up for something. I knew it was going to happen somewhere in this this live stream.
Well, you know, you are the Gabby Hayes of the group, and we love you for it. So,
you kid because you care.
Yes, and we love you, and you're incredibly talented, guys. This is fantastic. I want to tell you from the last Brofessionals when we were talking about favorite comics. I found it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I have this. I remember I said I can't find it.
Yeah.
It's got this massive, but it's still in great shape.
That is.
But it's my Marvel Treasury edition number 18 from '78, I think, or 7.
That's the Paul McCartney cover.
Yeah, the Paul McCartney Band on the Run cover, and I just went rummaging through. It's got Sam Wanamaker from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill who played it, but just great. I mean, you talk about brilliant work. My gosh. I mean,
that's a great one.
I mean, wow. I mean, one of my it's all yellow, but it's holding up pretty well. But I got to show this one panel real quick. And then where is it? Here it is. It's coming. It's about the orb. And he says, and I slid 25 yards on my face.
Oh, shit.
Oh, that's from Marvel Team Up. I love that issue.
That's how I feel in the morning.
Ghost Rider. That's the Ghost Rider.
Yep,
story.
the Ghost Rider one. Yep, just amazing
Ross
stuff.
Andrew drew that.
Yeah, Ross did draw that one. Yep.
Yeah.
I think did Esposito ink him? No, I mean, did Mike?
It's either Giacoya or Esposito.
Well, we'll say that for another day when we. Right. So, guys, thank you all. Please stick around. In 4 minutes, Graham Nolan, Niall Scala is coming back. Let me find the overlay here. He's going to be coming with the Week in Pop with our, let's show Jennifer Van Damsel, who's on the panel, as a beautiful Sailor Neptune.
Wow.
But, she's brilliant and wonderful.
Why don't we have beauty like that on this show?
We will. We're the Brofessionals, but we'll fix that.
Well, we had Anna in the chat. We had
that's in the chat.
But I'm already planning a show to have that for us, the Brofessionals.
Oh, there you go.
But guys, thank you all so much for joining us. where the hell is that damn promo? Niall asked me to do the promo.
And while you're looking for it, let's tell everybody that next week's show will be on Art's channel.
Yes.
Art Bear.
Art?
Art's working hard on an idea.
We'll have a good subject matter. I'll tell you right now, I just have to, God, Aaron, that game show thing was freaking fun.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
I went and got a bunch of those movies because of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry I missed it, but it's hockey playoffs, and my New York Islanders are now going to the semifinals.
Ooh, congrats.
And to play the Tampa Bay, the reigning Stanley Cup champs, the Tampa Bay
the Lightning, huh?
Lightning, yep, to go to the Cup and the drive for 5. So anyway, you guys are all awesome out there. Thank you for the super chat. Man, I got to scroll back. We got a lot of comments. Hey guys, in it, please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. I have links to all of the Brofessionals pages for those of us who have campaigns. They're all in demand right now. They're all ending soon. And of course, Aaron Lopresti over there, solo lefty. I have a link to his website, and we're looking forward to Aaron launching a campaign soon. So thank you all for joining. Very soon. The Brofessionals, you guys are all mensches. You're all badasses. And let us know what you guys think. Is the future bright for Inkers, or is it black? So thanks, everyone. See you guys soon, and stay tuned. Here comes a weekend pop.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you soon.